The beginning of chapter 3 is something of a slap in the face for the Corinthians, and if not a slap, then certainly a poke in the chest. Paul has been speaking of the wisdom hidden from the wise, of the mature amongst whom they have been speaking these spiritual things, and the straightforward division of humanity into two camps, the spiritual and the unspiritual. If any of the Corinthians had been swelling at these descriptions of Paul's, thinking themselves wiser than the world, mature and spiritual, they would have balked at his next remarks. They are people of the flesh, infants in Christ, unable to receive the greater wisdom which Paul has for them. Instead, they must be fed milk, the mere basics. This was obviously the case at the beginning when Paul first came to them, but in verse 2 he says that even now you are not ready, for you are still of the flesh. The evidence is the quarrelling over leaders. Thus Paul shows that he has been pursuing this thought since chapter 1 and has no intention of letting it go just yet. This factionalism has unfortunately revealed a considerable amount of fleshy immaturity amongst the Christians, the Corinthians. Their feeling of spiritual superiority is undermined by this boasting in leaders. Here is a good example of how someone like Paul can turn an issue or topic around and look at it from different angles. Leadership is important. It is a gift for the church, and leaders should be respected and prayed for. He will have reason to defend his own authority as an apostle. But in this context, where the problem is not lack of respect, but rather too much of it, Paul must show the relative worth of leaders. Leaders such as Paul and Apollos are not competitors. They are co-workers, and neither of them, in Paul's agricultural metaphor, are finally responsible for the result. That is left to God. So what the Corinthians are from beginning to end is from God. In 1:30, Paul wrote of God that he is the source of your life in Christ Jesus. And here in this metaphor, it is God who makes Paul and Apollos' labours effective by growth. The point is made again with another metaphor, this time building, with Paul as the skilled master builder. Paul seems happy to describe himself this way because it is the grace which God has given him. Specifically, this is laying the foundation, the bringing of the gospel to new places. The foundation, however, is Jesus Christ. Whatever is built upon it is tested on the day of judgment. This likely refers to leaders and not every Christian generally. Paul shows by this that there is a basis and standard to which leaders are called to account, that their work will be assessed. Paul is gradually shifting the Corinthians' view of what is important. It is the work which the leaders do that is important, that is, the building up of the temple of God. Here the temple metaphor is corporate, referring to all Christians. Later on in chapter 6, the temple image will be used of individuals, but the threat of destruction from God for anyone who destroys his temple highlights the specialness of the Corinthians and the importance of the leader's work. He is, in effect, saying, it is not us leaders who are important, but you Corinthians. And it is not us who are your beginning and end, but God. He admonishes them for their worldliness, exhorting them to be fools in the world's eyes, which in this context means not aligning themselves to whichever leader is perceived to have the greatest prestige. The Corinthians already have it all, anything worth having, because they already have Christ, or rather, because Christ already has them, and Christ belongs to God. As Paul wrote in 1:9, they were called by God, not Paul or Apollos or Cephas, into fellowship with his Son, Jesus. So no more boasting. As he quoted from Jeremiah 9:24 in 1:31, let him who boasts, boast in the Lord.